On a rainy Tuesday morning outside a prestigious private school, a luxury BMW roared through a deep puddle, drenching a single mother and her young son in muddy water. Behind the tinted window, a woman smirked, not just any woman, but the glamorous fiancée of her wealthy ex-husband. But what she didn't know was that someone powerful had been watching, and what started as a cruel act of humiliation would soon set off a quiet storm of justice, recognition, and redemption, all because one man refused to look away. The morning had begun like any other for Lena Parker, the alarm blaring at 5:30 a.m., a quick shower in the apartment with temperamental plumbing, 2 pieces of toast, one for her, one for Owen, the uniform for her first job already ironed and hanging on the bathroom door. "Owen, sweetie, time to get up," she called, her voice warm despite her exhaustion. 6-year-old Owen rubbed his eyes as he padded into their small kitchen. With his father's thoughtful brown eyes and her determined chin, he was the perfect blend of them both, though Jordan rarely noticed these days. "Is it raining, Mommy?" Owen asked, looking toward the window where drops were already racing each other down the glass. "Just a little," Lena replied, though the weather forecast had predicted downpours all day. Their umbrella had broken last week, and payday wasn't until Friday. "We'll be fine. Your raincoat will keep you dry." Owen ate his toast while Lena packed his lunch, a sandwich, an apple, and a homemade cookie. Not the elaborate bento boxes some of the other mothers prepared, but made with just as much love. "Remember, Mrs. Wilson is picking you up today," Lena reminded him. "I have both jobs back to back." Owen nodded, his expression too serious for a 6-year-old. By 7:15, they were out the door, hurrying through increasingly heavy rain. The Westbrook Academy was 15 blocks away, close enough to walk, which saved bus fare, but far enough to be challenging in bad weather. "Hold my hand when we cross the streets," Lena instructed as they navigated puddles and rushed pedestrians. As they approached the school's imposing brick facade, Lena felt the familiar tightening in her chest. This was Jordan's world, not hers. The mothers in designer raincoats who arrived in luxury SUVs, the fathers who pulled up in sports cars, checking investment portfolios on their phones. Owen had earned his place here with his brilliant mind. Lena was keeping him here through sheer determination, extra shifts, and the partial scholarship she'd fought for when Jordan reduced his support payments to pursue a more advantageous tax situation. They were almost to the front gates when Lena spotted the black BMW idling across the street. Her stomach clenched. She recognized that car. Jordan had bought it for Sabrina as an engagement present 3 months ago. "Let's hurry, sweetie," she said to Owen, quickening their pace. The light changed, and they stepped into the crosswalk. Halfway across, Lena heard the roar of an engine. Before she could react, the BMW swerved toward the massive puddle at the curb, sending a wave of filthy water directly at them. Instinctively, Lena pulled Owen behind her, taking the brunt of the splash. Cold, muddy water soaked through her uniform, splattered her face, and drenched her hair. Owen wasn't completely spared. His backpack and the bottom of his school pants were splattered. The BMW screeched to a halt a few feet away. The tinted window rolled down to reveal Sabrina, her blonde hair perfectly styled, her expression one of mock concern that quickly morphed into a smirk. "Next time, buy a car instead of chasing child support," she called out, loud enough for nearby parents to hear, or at least an umbrella. With a tinkling laugh, she rolled up her window and sped away. Lena stood frozen, mud dripping from her clothes, humiliation burning her cheeks. Several parents had witnessed the incident. Some looked away uncomfortably. Others whispered behind manicured hands. No one approached to help. "Mommy?" Owen's voice was small. "Are you okay?" Lena swallowed hard, forcing back tears. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just a little wet. My pants got dirty," he said, looking down at the splatter marks. "We'll tell your teacher it was an accident," Lena assured him, finding a tissue in her pocket to wipe a mud spot from his cheek. "It'll dry." As she straightened his collar and tried to brush off his backpack, Lena felt eyes on her. Looking up, she saw a man watching from across the street, with thoughtful eyes and a tan overcoat that spoke of quiet wealth. Something in his gaze made her stand straighter, summon a dignity she didn't quite feel in that moment. "Come on, Owen," she said, taking his hand again. "Let's get you to class." The school secretary's eyes widened when Lena approached the front desk with Owen. "Mrs. Parker, what happened to you?" "Just a puddle," Lena replied evenly. "Could Owen get a change of pants from the lost and found? His got a bit splashed." "Of course," the secretary said, looking at Lena's soaked uniform with concern. Will you be able to change before work?" Lena glanced at her watch. If she hurried back home, she'd be late for her shift at the hotel. If she went straight to work like this, she'd risk being sent home, or worse, fired. "I'll manage. Owen, be good today. I love you." "Love you too, Mommy," he replied, hugging her despite her wet clothes. As Lena turned to leave, the secretary called after her. "Mrs. Parker, there's a staff bathroom by the gymnasium you could use. It has a hand dryer. It might help a little." Lena's smile was genuine this time. "Thank you. I appreciate that." In the bathroom, Lena assessed the damage. Even her identification badge for the hotel was speckled with dirty water. She did what she could, rinsing her face, blotting her uniform with paper towels, holding sections under the hand dryer. It was a temporary fix at best. She'd still arrive at the Grand Regency Hotel looking like she'd been dragged through a swamp. As she worked, the tears she'd been holding back finally spilled over. Not for the ruined uniform or the extra trouble, not even for the public humiliation. She cried for the look on Owen's face, that mixture of embarrassment and fierce protectiveness no 6-year-old should have to feel. "She did it on purpose," Lena whispered to her reflection. "She saw us and did it on purpose." Outside the school, the rain had eased to a drizzle. Lena hurried toward the bus stop, already calculating how late she'd be. As she waited, she felt again the strange sensation of being watched. Looking around, she saw the same man from earlier, now speaking on his phone while looking in her direction. Normally, such attention would make her uncomfortable, but there was something in his expression, not pity, but a kind of controlled anger on her behalf, that felt oddly comforting. The bus arrived, and Lena boarded, heading for the back where fewer people would notice her condition. As the bus pulled away, she glanced out the window. The man in the tan coat was still there, watching as she departed. Across town at the Whitaker Development Group headquarters, Jordan Whitaker glanced up from his computer as his office door opened. Sabrina sauntered in, dropping her designer handbag on a chair before leaning over to kiss him. "You're wet," he noted, frowning at the damp spots on her silk blouse. "It's raining, darling," she replied, smoothing her hair. "Just came from dropping Micah off at that dreadful doggy daycare you insist on. Then I swung by Westbrook." Jordan's eyebrows rose. "Westbrook? Why?" Sabrina examined her manicure casually. "Just wanted to see the campus again before the charity auction next month. I ran into your ex, actually." She and the boy were looking rather bedraggled. Something in her tone made Jordan pause. "Sabrina, what did you do?" She laughed lightly. "Nothing, really. There was a puddle, and well, physics happened. Not my fault she can't afford proper rain gear." Jordan sighed, returning to his screen. "Try not to create drama, please. The divorce was messy enough." "Oh, please," Sabrina scoffed. "She's irrelevant. Anyway, don't forget we have brunch with the Kensingtons on Saturday. Richard wants to discuss the riverfront project." As Sabrina continued chattering about social obligations, Jordan's mind drifted. Their marriage felt like a different lifetime. Sometimes, in quiet moments, he remembered the early days with Lena, her genuine laugh, the way she'd supported him when his father thought he'd never amount to anything. But those memories were inconvenient, so he pushed them aside. He had moved on to bigger things. If Lena hadn't been able to keep up, that was hardly his concern. "Jordan, are you listening?" Sabrina's sharp tone cut through his thoughts. "Sorry, thinking about the Montgomery contract," he lied smoothly. "What were you saying?" Dean Marshall sat in his corner office at Marshall Investments, staring thoughtfully at his computer screen. The article displayed showed a younger Jordan Whitaker and his then-wife Lena at a charity gala from 5 years ago. The caption read, "Whitaker Development Group's rising star Jordan Whitaker and wife Lena at the Children's Hospital benefit." Dean leaned back in his chair, thinking about what he'd witnessed that morning, the deliberate cruelty of the splash. He hadn't immediately recognized Lena Parker, formerly Lena Whitaker, but something about her composure had seemed familiar. As a major investor in Whitaker Development Group, he maintained professional relationships with the family, but he kept his personal opinions to himself. Until now, picking up his phone, he called his assistant. "Angela, could you come in for a moment?" When the efficient woman appeared at his door, Dean gestured for her to close it behind her. "I need you to find some information for me," discreetly, he said. "Everything you can about Lena Parker, formerly Lena Whitaker. Current address, employment, financial situation, and her son, Owen, I believe his name is." Angela didn't question the request. "Anything specific you're looking for?" Dean considered. "Any hardships she's facing, health concerns, outstanding debts. Also, her relationship with her ex-husband since the divorce." "This is about Jordan Whitaker's ex-wife?" Angela clarified, her expression carefully neutral. "Yes. I witnessed an incident this morning that concerned me. I'd like to know more about her circumstances." Angela nodded. "I'll have a preliminary report by tomorrow morning." After she left, Dean turned back to his computer, closing the article and pulling up the Whitaker Development Group's latest financial reports. As a board member, he had access to information most investors didn't, including the details of certain executive expenses. He scrolled through the list until he found what he was looking for. A charge for a BMW 7 Series, listed as a client relations vehicle, but delivered to Jordan Whitaker's home address, the same car he'd seen that morning. Interesting, Dean murmured. Company funds for a personal gift to a fiancée. That wasn't just ethically questionable. It potentially violated several corporate governance policies. Dean made a note of it, not yet sure how or if he would use this information. At the Grand Regency Hotel, Lena slipped through the employee entrance, hoping to reach the locker room without being noticed. Her luck didn't hold. "Parker, what happened to you?" Mrs. Hendricks, the head of housekeeping, blocked her path, eyes wide with dismay. "I got splashed on the way to my son's school," Lena explained, feeling the weight of exhaustion and humiliation pressing down on her again. "I tried to clean up, but—" "You can't work looking like that," Mrs. Hendricks interrupted. "We have standards." "Please," Lena said quietly. "I have a spare shirt in my locker. The pants are dark. The stains barely show now that they're drying. I need this shift." Mrs. Hendricks studied her for a long moment. She was strict but fair, and she'd come to respect Lena's work ethic over the past 2 years. "Change the shirt, do something with that hair, and stay on the unoccupied floors until you're presentable," she finally said. "And Parker, don't let Mr. Phillips see you. He's been looking for excuses to cut staff." "Thank you," Lena said with genuine gratitude. "I won't let you down." In the locker room, Lena changed quickly, smoothing her hair into a tight bun that concealed the worst of the damage. Her pants were indeed drying, the mud stains darkening to barely noticeable smudges against the navy fabric. As she gathered her cleaning cart, another housekeeper, Maria, approached with a sympathetic smile. "Rough morning?" she asked, offering Lena a travel-sized bottle of fabric freshener. "This might help with the smell of the mud." Lena accepted it gratefully. "Thanks. It's been one of those days. Your boy okay? I know you walk him to that fancy school." "Owen's fine," Lena assured her. "Better off than me." Maria squeezed her arm. "You're tough, girl. Tougher than most of the rich folks whose mess we clean up." With that encouragement, Lena headed to the service elevator, determined to get through her shift with the same dignity she'd shown that morning. As she cleaned her assigned rooms, Lena's mind drifted back to her marriage. She'd been 22, just out of design school. He'd been 26, working his way up in his family's company. For a while, it had been good. Lena had contributed design ideas to several Whitaker projects. They'd traveled, built a beautiful home, welcomed Owen into the world. But as Jordan's success grew, so did the gap between them. His family had never fully accepted her. The daughter of a schoolteacher and a nurse wasn't their idea of a suitable match for the Whitaker heir. The emotional neglect had started gradually. Subtle criticisms from his mother about Lena's background, her parenting, her social skills. Then came the coldness at home, the separate bedrooms, the missed family dinners. When Lena discovered Jordan's affair with his young assistant Sabrina, she'd been devastated but not entirely surprised. The surprise came during the divorce, when the Whitaker family closed ranks completely. Their family friends evaporated. The prenuptial agreement she'd signed in the haze of young love left her with almost nothing. She'd gotten custody of Owen and a modest support payment that Jordan constantly threatened to reduce. No alimony, no share in the business, no place in the social world she'd been part of for 7 years. But there had been unexpected gifts in the struggle, the discovery of her own resilience, the deepening of her relationship with Owen, who showed a sensitivity and intelligence that amazed her daily. The simple pleasures she'd overlooked in her previous life, a cup of tea on a quiet evening, the satisfaction of solving a problem independently, the genuine friendships with people like Maria who valued her for herself, not her husband's status. Lena was so lost in thought that she almost missed the small velvet box sitting on the bed in the suite she was cleaning. Frowning, she picked it up carefully. The hotel catered to wealthy clients who sometimes left valuable items behind. Opening it revealed a diamond tennis bracelet that even her untrained eye could tell was worth thousands. She immediately called Mrs. Hendricks. "Room 712 has a valuable bracelet left behind," she reported. "I'll bring it to Lost and Found right away." "Good catch, Parker," Mrs. Hendricks approved. "That's the Ambrose suite. They checked out this morning but might not have noticed it missing yet." As Lena headed to the Lost and Found office, a tall man in an expensive suit stepped out of the elevator. She recognized him immediately as Richard Kensington, one of Jordan's business partners and a frequent guest at the Whitaker family events she'd once attended. She lowered her eyes and tried to move past him with her cart, hoping he wouldn't recognize her. No such luck. "Well, well," he said, blocking her path. "If it isn't Lena Whitaker, or is it Parker again now?" Lena forced herself to meet his gaze. "It's Parker. Excuse me, Mr. Kensington. I need to deliver this to Lost and Found." He glanced at the velvet box in her hand, his eyebrows rising. "Handling the valuable items, are we? How?" Trustworthy, they must find you. The insinuation stung, but Lena kept her expression neutral. Just doing my job, sir. I must say, this is a step down from hosting charity galas, he continued, clearly enjoying her discomfort. Jordan mentioned you were working, but housekeeping? That's rather humbling. There's dignity in all honest work, Lena replied evenly. Now if you'll excuse me. As she maneuvered past him, Richard called after her. Oh, and congratulations to your replacement. Have you received the wedding invitation yet? I hear it's going to be the event of the season. Lena continued walking, her back straight, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing how his words affected her. No, she hadn't received an invitation to Jordan and Sabrina's wedding. But the casual cruelty of these people, first Sabrina that morning, now Richard, still had the power to wound. At the lost and found office, Lena carefully documented the bracelet's discovery. The clerk thanked her for her honesty, noting that the Ambrose family had already called about the missing jewelry. As her shift ended, Lena gathered her things, eager to pick up Owen from Mrs. Wilson's and spend a few precious hours with him before her evening job. The next morning, Dean Marshall reviewed the report his assistant had compiled about Lena Parker. It was more comprehensive than he'd expected, and the picture it painted bothered him deeply. Lena worked 2 jobs, housekeeping at the Grand Regency Hotel and part-time cashiering at Greenway Market. She lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in a modest building 20 blocks from Owen's school. She had no car, walking or taking public transportation everywhere. Her financial situation was precarious, just above water but with virtually no safety net. More concerning was Owen's health situation. The boy had moderate asthma that required daily medication and occasional emergency treatments. The insurance Lena received through the hotel covered only a portion of these expenses, leaving her to pay significant out-of-pocket costs. The report also detailed the divorce settlement. Lena had received custody of Owen but minimal financial support. Jordan Whitaker paid for Owen's private school tuition directly to the institution and provided a modest monthly child support payment that he had reduced twice in the past 3 years. She declined to pursue alimony, Angela noted when Dean questioned this. According to the court records, she told her lawyer she just wanted out and didn't want to fight the Whitakers for more. Pride, Dean murmured. Or fear. The most interesting section of the report concerned Lena's relationship with her ex-husband and his family since the divorce. There was a pattern of what could only be described as deliberate social isolation. Invitations to school functions were misplaced. Parent-teacher conferences were scheduled at times Lena couldn't attend due to work. Owen was enrolled in exclusive activities that took place during Lena's designated visitation times. Yet through all of this, there was not a single documented instance of Lena speaking ill of Jordan to their son or creating conflict. She had maintained a dignified silence, absorbing blow after blow without retaliation. One more thing, sir, Angela said, pointing to the final page. The child, Owen, has been invited to join the school's advanced learning program next year. It would mean additional fees that aren't covered by his current scholarship arrangement. Dean nodded thoughtfully. Thank you, Angela. This is excellent work. After his assistant left, Dean sat in silence, considering his next move. He rarely involved himself in personal matters, but something about Lena Parker's quiet dignity had resonated with him. Dean reached for his phone and made a call to an old friend who specialized in discreet problem-solving. Marcus, I need a favor, he said when the man answered. I need you to purchase and deliver a few items for me, anonymously. At her apartment building later that evening, Lena balanced her grocery bags while trying to check her mail. It was nearly 10 p.m. She was exhausted but grateful that she'd been able to pick up an extra shift. The additional income would help with Owen's upcoming doctor's appointment. As she managed to open her mailbox, something unusual caught her eye. A large package sat on the floor of the mailroom, with her name clearly printed on the label. Frowning, Lena set down her groceries and examined it warily. With some effort, she gathered both the package and her groceries and made her way up to her apartment. Once inside, she set everything down on the small kitchen table and studied the mysterious box more carefully. There was no return address, just her name and address printed on a high-quality label. Cautiously, Lena opened it. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a brand-new umbrella, not a cheap drugstore model, but a sturdy, high-end umbrella with a wooden handle and reinforced canopy. Beneath it lay a small envelope, her hands trembling slightly. Lena opened the envelope. Inside was a prepaid grocery card with a $500 balance. No note, no explanation, no clue as to the sender's identity. What in the world? She whispered to the empty apartment. Her first instinct was suspicion. Was this some kind of trick? A mistake? Should she report it to the building manager? But as she held the umbrella, ran her fingers over the smooth wooden handle, she was struck by the timing. Just yesterday, she had been soaked because her old umbrella was broken. And now this appeared, as if someone had seen her plight and responded with unexpected generosity. Lena set the umbrella aside and examined the grocery card more closely. $500 would make an enormous difference in their monthly budget. It might even let her take a night off from her second job to attend Owen's upcoming school presentation. But should she use it? Accept help from an unknown source? Pride warred with practicality as Lena stared at the card. Accepting charity felt like a step backward. Yet as she glanced around the small apartment, at Owen's too small desk where he diligently did his homework, at the stack of medical bills she was slowly paying off, practical need won out over pride. "Thank you," she whispered to whoever might have sent the gifts. "Whoever you are, thank you." The next morning brought another surprise. When Lena went to pick up Owen from Mrs. Wilson's apartment before school, the elderly woman handed her a package that had been delivered that morning. "Special delivery," Mrs. Wilson said with curious eyes. "Came by private courier. Had to sign for it and everything." This package was smaller than the one from the previous night, but equally mysterious. Like the first, it bore only Lena's name, no return address. "Should I open it now?" Lena asked, glancing at her watch. They needed to leave for school soon. "Of course you should," Mrs. Wilson exclaimed. "Owen and I are dying of curiosity, aren't we, sweetheart?" Owen nodded eagerly, his eyes wide with excitement. With both of them watching intently, Lena carefully opened the package. Inside was a sleek electronic device that she recognized as a high-end portable asthma monitor, the kind that tracked breathing patterns and medication usage, sending alerts when intervention was needed. It was the latest model, one she had researched but dismissed as far too expensive. "It's for your asthma, sweetie," she explained to Owen, her voice thick with emotion. "It helps make sure you're breathing well." "Cool," Owen exclaimed, examining the device with interest. "It looks like a space gadget." "There's a note this time," Mrs. Wilson pointed out, gesturing to a small card that had fallen onto the table. Lena picked it up with trembling fingers. The message was brief and typed, offering no clue to the sender's identity. "For Owen's health, no strings attached." "Mom, who sent it?" Owen asked, looking up from the device. "I don't know, sweetheart," Lena admitted. "Someone very kind, it seems." Carefully repacking the monitor, they would set it up properly that evening. "Now we need to hurry, or you'll be late for school." As they walked to Westbrook Academy, Lena's mind raced with questions. Someone knew a great deal about their lives. Someone with resources and, apparently, good intentions. But who and why? The rain had stopped, but Lena brought the new umbrella anyway, partly to test it and partly because forecasts predicted afternoon showers. At the school gates, Lena knelt to straighten Owen's collar and give him a quick hug. "Have a wonderful day, my love. I'll see you at Mrs. Wilson's after work." As Owen ran toward the building, Lena stood to leave and froze. Across the street, partially obscured by a newspaper stand, stood the man in the tan coat, the same man who had witnessed the splashing incident, the same man she'd noticed watching her at the bus stop. Their eyes met briefly before he turned and walked away, his movements unhurried yet purposeful. A chill ran down Lena's spine. Was he the mysterious benefactor? She considered following him, demanding answers, but a glance at her watch changed her mind. As he walked to his waiting car, Dean reflected on the reports he'd received confirming the delivery of his gifts. Small interventions, but ones that would make a meaningful difference in Lena's daily struggles. Phase 1 of what Dean was beginning to think of as Project Dignity. Phase 2 would require more direct involvement. But first, he needed to understand more about the dynamics at play in the Whitaker world. Specifically, the relationship between Jordan and his fiancée Sabrina, and how it affected Owen. For that, he would attend the charity brunch scheduled that weekend, where Jordan and Sabrina would undoubtedly be holding court. The Metropolitan Art Museum's annual charity brunch was a highlight of the social season. The Whitaker family had been major supporters for generations, and Jordan had inherited his grandfather's position on the museum board. Sabrina had spent hours preparing for the event, selecting a cream-colored Chanel suit that projected both sophistication and the right amount of demure charm for a morning function. "Jordan, darling, the Andersons just arrived," she murmured, subtly directing him toward the influential banking family. "We should say hello before the presentation." Jordan followed her lead, as he increasingly did at these functions. Sabrina had a gift for social navigation that he had come to rely on. She knew exactly who needed attention, whose ego required stroking, which connections would prove most valuable. "Tom, Catherine, wonderful to see you," Jordan greeted the couple with practiced warmth. "Sabrina and I were just discussing the museum's expansion plans. I'd love your thoughts." As the conversation flowed around her, Sabrina discreetly checked her phone. She had posted several photos from the event already. The likes and comments were flooding in, each one a small validation of her carefully constructed image. A new notification caught her eye, a tag in someone else's post. Curious, she tapped it, then nearly dropped her phone in shock. The post showed a series of photos from outside Westbrook Academy. The first captured the exact moment the BMW splashed through the puddle, sending a wave of muddy water toward Lena and Owen. The second showed Lena shielding her son from the worst of the splash. The third showed Sabrina's face clearly visible through the car window, her expression one of malicious amusement. The caption read, "Witness this deliberate act of cruelty at Westbrook this week. Driver identified as Sabrina Hayes, fiancée of prominent developer Jordan Whitaker, splashing his ex-wife and their son." Already, the post had hundreds of shares and comments, most expressing outrage at Sabrina's behavior and sympathy for the soaked mother and child. "Sabrina, are you all right? You've gone quite pale." Catherine Anderson's concerned voice broke through her panic. "Just a minor work issue," Sabrina managed, quickly closing the app. Nothing that can't wait. But inside, she was seething. The incident had been a moment of petty satisfaction, a way to remind Lena of her place in the social hierarchy. It wasn't supposed to become public, to be scrutinized and judged. As the group moved toward the brunch tables, Sabrina scanned the crowd, wondering if the photographer might be present. Her eyes landed on a tall man in an expensive suit, standing slightly apart from the main crowd. "Jordan," she said quietly, nudging her fiancé. "Who is that man by the Rodin sculpture? The one speaking with the museum director." Jordan glanced over, his expression clearing in recognition. "That's Dean Marshall, major investor, sits on several boards, including ours at Whitaker Development, keeps to himself mostly." "Why?" "Just curious. He seems to be watching us." Jordan shrugged. "Marshall watches everyone. It's what makes him a good investor. Don't worry about him. We should focus on the Andersons. Tom mentioned they're looking for a vacation property in the Hamptons. Could be a good connection for the new development." But Sabrina couldn't shake the feeling of being observed. As they took their seats for brunch, she noticed Marshall had positioned himself at a table with a clear view of theirs. Throughout the meal, she caught him glancing their way several times, his expression unreadable. When the formal presentations began, Sabrina leaned close to Jordan's ear. "I need to tell you something," she whispered. "Someone posted photos of me, of an incident at Westbrook, with Lena." Jordan frowned slightly. "What kind of incident?" "I may have splashed her slightly when I was driving by," Sabrina admitted, downplaying the deliberate nature of her action. "It was raining. There was a puddle. Not a big deal, but someone photographed it, and it's getting some negative attention online." "Christ, Sabrina," Jordan muttered, careful to maintain his public smile. "I told you not to create drama. The last thing we need is social media backlash, especially with the riverfront project up for city approval next month." "I know, I'm sorry," she said, though she felt more annoyed than remorseful. "I'll have my publicist handle it. Maybe suggest it was an accident, or that the photos are misleading." Jordan nodded tersely. "Do that. And stay away from Westbrook for a while. In fact, stay away from Lena entirely. She's not worth the trouble." Sabrina agreed readily, but inside she was fuming, not at Jordan's reprimand, but at Lena for somehow, once again, creating complications in her life. First, by maintaining a presence at Westbrook, a constant reminder of Jordan's previous marriage. Then by potentially garnering public sympathy that could reflect poorly on Sabrina's carefully crafted image. "I put Lena in her place this morning," she had boasted to Jordan after the splashing incident. He had laughed weakly then, not particularly interested but not objecting either. Now it seemed that small moment of petty triumph might have consequences. As the brunch concluded and guests began to mingle again, Sabrina found herself face to face with Dean Marshall. Up close, he was more imposing than she had expected. "Miss Hayes," he greeted her with a slight nod. "Congratulations on your engagement. Jordan is a fortunate man." "Thank you, Mr. Marshall," she replied, summoning her most winning smile. "Jordan has mentioned your important role in Whitaker Development. We must have you over for dinner sometime." Dean's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Perhaps, though I find my schedule increasingly occupied with community initiatives. In fact, I've recently become interested in supporting single working parents. Such resilience they show, don't you think?" Something in his tone made Sabrina stiffen. "A worthy cause," she managed. "If you'll excuse me, I see the Kensingtons have just arrived. Lovely to meet you properly." As she walked away, Sabrina could feel Marshall's eyes on her back. Across the room, Dean watched Sabrina rejoin Jordan, noting the way she immediately whispered something in his ear, her eyes darting back in Dean's direction. He had deliberately mentioned single parents to gauge her reaction, and her discomfort confirmed his suspicion. Good. A little discomfort might encourage more thoughtful behavior in the future. As Dean prepared to leave the brunch, his phone buzzed with a message from his investigator. The text was brief but significant. Located source of photos. Parent at Westbrook. Sympathetic to L. Parker. Images continuing to gain traction online. S. Hayes' publicist already attempting damage control. Dean smiled slightly. He hadn't orchestrated the photos or their posting. That had been an unexpected development, but he was pleased to see Sabrina facing some consequences for her cruelty. 2 weeks after the mysterious gifts began appearing, Lena's life had settled into a cautious new rhythm. The grocery cart had allowed her to buy healthier food and even take one night off to attend Owen's school presentation. The asthma monitor had already proven invaluable, alerting her to a potential flare-up before Owen's symptoms became severe, and the sturdy umbrella had kept them both dry through several rainy days. No more packages had arrived, but Lena remained watchful, both grateful for and curious about her unknown benefactor. She had spotted the man in the tan coat twice more near Westbrook, always at a distance, never approaching. She had begun to think of him as her guardian angel, though she shared this fanciful notion with no one but Owen, who delighted in the mystery. On a Wednesday evening, Lena was finishing her shift at the Grand Regency, looking forward to a rare night off from her second job. She had promised Owen they would make homemade pizza and watch a movie of his choosing, small pleasures that felt luxurious after weeks of constant work. As she returned her cleaning cart to the storage area, Mrs. Hendricks approached with an unusually serious expression. "Parker, Mr. Phillips wants to see you in his office. Now." Lena's stomach dropped. Edward Phillips, the hotel manager, rarely interacted with housekeeping staff directly unless there was a problem, a serious problem. "Did he say what it's about?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Mrs. Hendricks shook her head. "No, but he's got security with him, and he doesn't look happy." The walk to the manager's office felt interminable. Lena's mind raced through possibilities. When she entered the office, Mr. Phillips sat behind his desk, his thin face set in a grim expression. Beside him stood the head of hotel security, Mr. Vasquez, equally serious. On the desk lay a designer handbag that Lena recognized as belonging to Mrs. Blackwell, a regular guest who always stayed in the same luxury suite. "Ms. Parker," Phillips began without preamble, "are you familiar with Mrs. Eleanor Blackwell's accommodations?" "Yes, sir," Lena replied carefully. "I've cleaned her suite many times. She was in 815 this week." "And were you in suite 815 yesterday between 2 and 4 p.m.? "Yes, sir. I cleaned it during my regular shift." Phillips and Vasquez exchanged glances. Mrs. Blackwell has reported that her diamond earrings are missing from this handbag. She distinctly remembers placing them inside before leaving for a luncheon. When she returned, they were gone. Lena felt the blood drain from her face. "Sir, I never touched Mrs. Blackwell's handbag. I would never—" "We've reviewed the security footage," Vasquez interrupted. "You were the only staff member who entered the suite during that time period. The earrings are valued at $12,000, Phillips added. "Mrs. Blackwell is a platinum member and a personal friend of the owner. She's extremely upset." "I understand, but I didn't take anything," Lena insisted, her heart pounding. "I followed protocol. I cleaned the bathroom, changed the linens, vacuumed, and dusted the surfaces. I never opened guests' bags or personal items." Phillips sighed. "Ms. Parker, your employment record has been satisfactory until now. If you were to return the earrings, we might be able to resolve this without involving the police." The implication was clear. They believed she was guilty. "I can't return what I didn't take," Lena said, her voice trembling slightly. "Please, check the footage more carefully. I never went near her handbag." "The footage is inconclusive," Vasquez admitted. "The bag was on the desk, which is partially obscured by a decorative screen, but no one else entered the room." Phillips studied her for a long moment. "Ms. Parker, pending investigation, you're suspended without pay. Please surrender your access card and locker key." The words hit Lena like a physical blow. Suspended without pay. Her primary source of income, gone. Her reputation tarnished. All for something she hadn't done. "Mr. Phillips, please," she said, struggling to maintain her composure. "I have a son to support. I can't afford to be suspended. And I swear to you, I did not take those earrings. I'm sorry, but this is hotel policy for theft allegations. We'll expedite the investigation, but until it's resolved, you cannot work here." Numb with shock, Lena surrendered her access card and locker key. She gathered her personal belongings under Vasquez's watchful eye, feeling like a criminal though she had done nothing wrong. As she walked out of the Grand Regency, the reality of her situation crashed down on her. Without her hotel salary, she couldn't pay rent. Her part-time cashier job provided only a fraction of what she needed to survive. For the first time since the divorce, Lena felt truly desperate. On the bus ride to Mrs. Wilson's, Lena fought back tears. She couldn't let Owen see her despair. He was too young to understand their financial precariousness, too innocent to be burdened with adult concerns. By the time she reached the elderly woman's apartment, Lena had composed herself enough to greet her son with a smile. "Mommy," Owen exclaimed, running to hug her. "We're still making pizza, right? Mrs. Wilson helped me draw the toppings we need." Lena hugged him tightly, drawing strength from his unconditional love. "Absolutely, sweetheart. Nothing could make me miss pizza night with you." Mrs. Wilson, perceptive as always, noticed Lena's strained expression. "Owen, why don't you finish coloring that picture while I talk to your mom for a minute?" Once Owen was occupied at the small table, Mrs. Wilson led Lena to the tiny kitchen. "What happened?" she asked quietly. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Briefly, Lena explained the situation at the hotel. Mrs. Wilson's kind face creased with concern. "That's ridiculous," she declared. "Anyone who knows you would never believe you'd steal anything." "Unfortunately, hotel management doesn't know me the way you do," Lena said wearily. "And without that job, I don't know how I'll manage." "You'll stay for dinner," Mrs. Wilson decided. "Then we'll figure something out. I might know someone at the Brighton Hotel who's looking for experienced staff." Lena squeezed the older woman's hand gratefully. "Thank you, but for tonight, I just want to focus on Owen. He's been looking forward to our pizza night all week." "Of course, dear. Children need stability, especially when things are difficult." Throughout the evening, Lena maintained a cheerful facade for Owen's sake. They made pizza with the ingredients she had splurged on with the grocery card. They watched his favorite superhero movie. She helped him bathe and read him 2 bedtime stories when they returned to their apartment. Only after he was sound asleep did she allow herself to cry, silent tears streaming down her face as she sat at their small kitchen table, calculating and recalculating their budget, trying to find a solution that didn't exist. The next morning, Lena called the Greenway Market and managed to pick up 3 additional shifts for the coming week. She also applied for positions at 2 other hotels, though she worried about how to explain her suspension from the Grand Regency. When she dropped Owen at school, she couldn't help scanning the area for the man in the tan coat. "Mom?" Owen asked as they approached the gates. "Are you looking for the guardian angel?" Lena smiled despite her worries. "Maybe, but don't worry about that, sweetie. Have a wonderful day at school. Mrs. Wilson will pick you up at the usual time." "Okay. Love you, Mom." "Love you too, more than all the stars." As Owen ran toward his classroom, Lena felt a pang of anxiety. For a brief, desperate moment, she considered calling Jordan, explaining the situation, asking for a temporary increase in child support, but she immediately dismissed the idea. Jordan would use any sign of vulnerability to his advantage, perhaps even question her fitness as a parent if he knew she'd been suspended for alleged theft. No, she would find another way. What Lena didn't know was that news of her suspension had already reached Dean Marshall through channels he had established specifically to monitor her situation. When his private investigator reported that Lena had been accused of stealing diamond earrings from a guest's handbag, Dean was skeptical. "Get me the security footage and find out everything you can about this Mrs. Blackwell. Her relationship with the hotel, any connection to the Whitakers or Sabrina Hayes." By that afternoon, Dean was reviewing the security footage from the Grand Regency on his office computer. As the hotel security chief had noted, the camera angle partially obscured the desk where Mrs. Blackwell's handbag sat. Lena could be seen cleaning the suite, efficiently moving from task to task, but there was no clear shot of her approaching or touching the bag. However, something about the footage bothered Dean. He watched it 3 times before identifying the anomaly. The timestamp jumped slightly at the 2:47 p.m. mark, a gap of approximately 20 seconds, not enough to be obvious in casual viewing, but significant. He immediately called his technology specialist. "There's an edit in this footage. I need to know if it was done by the hotel's security system or if someone tampered with it after the fact." While waiting for that analysis, Dean reviewed the information on Eleanor Blackwell. She was a wealthy widow in her 60s, a regular at the Grand Regency for over a decade, and this detail made Dean sit up straighter. She was a close friend of Victoria Whitaker, Jordan's mother. "Interesting," Dean murmured. "Could this be coincidence or something more deliberate?" His tech specialist called back within the hour. "The edit was made after the fact, sir. Someone with access to the security system deleted a short segment and smoothed over the transition. Amateur work, but good enough to fool a cursory review." Dean's suspicions deepened. "Can you determine when the edit was made, and from which access point?" "The system logs show it was modified yesterday at 6:15 p.m., after the alleged theft was reported. The access credentials belong to someone named Thomas Vasquez, head of hotel security." "And has Mrs. Blackwell filed a police report about the missing earrings?" "No, sir. Only an internal complaint with the hotel." The picture was becoming clearer. Dean had seen enough corporate intrigue to recognize a setup when he encountered one. The question was, who was behind it? Regardless of motive, Dean's course of action was clear. Lena Parker needed her job, and more importantly, she deserved to have her name cleared. I want the original, unedited footage, whatever it takes, and schedule a meeting for me with Edward Phillips, the hotel manager. Use my connection to the ownership group if necessary. Dean had never intended to reveal himself to Lena so soon, but this situation demanded more direct intervention. An innocent woman's livelihood and reputation were at stake. As his team worked to uncover the truth about the security footage, Dean made another call, this one to Harrison Blackwood, the actual owner of the Grand Regency and an old business associate. Harrison, Dean Marshall here. I need a favor regarding one of your employees. The next day, Lena received a call from the Grand Regency. Her hands trembled as she answered, hoping against hope for good news. Ms. Parker, this is Edward Phillips. I'm calling to inform you that new evidence has come to light regarding the missing earrings. Mrs. Blackwell has withdrawn her complaint. It appears the items were misplaced, not stolen. Lena closed her eyes in relief. So the suspension is lifted? Yes. In fact, the ownership has instructed me to offer you our sincere apologies for the misunderstanding. You're welcome to return to your position immediately, with back pay for the days missed. Back pay? Lena repeated, stunned by this unexpected generosity. Thank you. Additionally, we would like to offer you a small compensation for the distress caused. A bonus of $500 will be included in your next paycheck. Lena was speechless. This went far beyond standard hotel policy. Mr. Phillips, may I ask what new evidence came to light? There was a pause before he answered. I'm not at liberty to discuss all the details, but I can tell you that the security footage was reviewed more thoroughly, and it became clear that you never approached Mrs. Blackwell's personal belongings. After the call ended, Lena sat in stunned silence. Her mind went immediately to the man in the tan coat, her mysterious benefactor. Was he watching over her more actively than she had realized? For the first time since the divorce, Lena felt truly protected, not in a way that diminished her independence or dignity, but in a way that suggested someone recognized her worth and was ensuring she was treated fairly. That evening, when she picked up Owen from Mrs. Wilson's apartment, Lena was able to share the good news. I got my job back, she told them both. There was a misunderstanding, but it's all cleared up now. That's wonderful, dear. I knew they'd come to their senses. Owen hugged his mother tightly. I told you the guardian angel would help, Mom. I drew another picture for them. Can we leave it somewhere they'll find it? Lena smiled at her son's faith in their mysterious protector. I think they already know how grateful we are, sweetheart. But your picture is beautiful. We'll keep it somewhere special. Across town, Dean Marshall sat in his study, reviewing the unedited security footage his team had obtained. The missing 20 seconds showed exactly what he had suspected. Mrs. Blackwell herself removing the earrings from her handbag and placing them in her coat pocket before leaving the suite. There had never been any theft. The entire accusation had been fabricated. A call to Harrison Blackwood had resolved the situation quickly. As the hotel's owner, Blackwood had been concerned about potential liability for false accusations against an employee. A quiet word with Mrs. Blackwell, reminding her of the existence of unedited footage and the legal implications of a false theft report, had been sufficient to make the problem disappear. But Dean was troubled by the deeper question. Why target Lena specifically? His investigator's report had suggested the latter. Mrs. Blackwell had been overheard at her ladies' luncheon the day before the incident, discussing Jordan Whitaker's unfortunate first marriage with several friends, including Victoria Whitaker. Sabrina Hayes had been present as well, contributing her own unflattering commentary about Lena. The timing suggested coordination rather than coincidence. First, the public humiliation at Westbrook, now an attempt to destroy Lena's employment and reputation. It seemed that Sabrina, perhaps with the Whitakers' tacit approval, was engaged in a systematic effort to undermine Lena. Dean suspected it was not rational but emotional. Sabrina's insecurity, Jordan's guilt, the family's discomfort with Lena's continued presence on the periphery of their world through Owen. Her very dignity was an indictment of their behavior. Well, if they were determined to make Lena's life difficult, Dean was equally determined to ensure she had the resources to withstand their attacks. The next phase of his plan could now move forward. It was time to meet Lena Parker face to face. That Friday afternoon, Westbrook Academy held its quarterly fundraising fair. Parents, students, and faculty gathered on the expansive grounds to raise money for the school's scholarship fund through games, food stalls, and a silent auction of student artwork. Lena had arranged to leave work early to attend, wanting to support Owen, who had contributed a painting to the auction. The grocery card had allowed her to bake cookies for the bake sale as well, a small contribution, but one that made her feel more a part of the school community than usual. As she helped set up the bake sale table, Lena was acutely aware of the social dynamics at play around her. The Westbrook mothers in their designer casual wear, clustering in tight groups, the few glances in her direction, quickly averted when she looked up. She had grown accustomed to her outsider status, but it still stung on occasions like this. "Those cookies look delicious," a warm voice commented. Lena looked up to see a tall man standing before the table, and her heart skipped a beat. It was him, the man in the tan coat, though today he wore a casual blazer over a light sweater. Up close, he was older than she had guessed, perhaps in his mid-40s, with kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. "Thank you," she managed, finding her voice. "Chocolate chip with sea salt, my son's favorite." "Excellent choice," he said, selecting one and placing a $20 bill in the donation jar, far more than the suggested price. "I'm Dean Marshall. My nephew attends Westbrook, though he's only in kindergarten." "Lena Parker," she replied, studying his face for any sign that he recognized her. "My son Owen is in first grade." "Parker," he repeated thoughtfully. "Would that be Owen Parker, the young artist with the space-themed painting in the auction?" Lena smiled with maternal pride. "Yes, that's my son. How did you know?" "I was just viewing the auction items. His piece caught my eye. Remarkably sophisticated use of color for a child his age." "He loves astronomy," Lena explained. "Spends hours with his library books about space." Dean nodded, taking a bite of the cookie. "These are exceptional as well. You're a woman of many talents, Mrs. Parker." Before Lena could respond, they were interrupted by the arrival of several parents looking to purchase baked goods. Dean stepped aside, but didn't leave. He remained nearby, observing the interactions as Lena served customers with friendly efficiency. What he noticed, and what Lena had grown accustomed to ignoring, was the way certain mothers barely acknowledged her as they made their purchases. When there was a lull in customers, Dean approached again. "I understand you're on the fundraising committee, Ms. Parker." "Oh no," Lena corrected him. "I'm just helping out today. I don't usually have time for committee work with my schedule." "Ah, I see. And what do you do, if you don't mind my asking?" "I work at the Grand Regency Hotel," Lena said, lifting her chin slightly. She had long since stopped being ashamed of her job, in housekeeping, and part-time at Greenway Market. Dean nodded, no judgment in his expression. "Demanding work, I imagine, especially while raising a child." "It can be challenging," Lena admitted, "but Owen makes it all worthwhile." "Mom!" As if summoned by the mention of his name, Owen came running up to the table. "Ms. Thompson says people are bidding on my painting. 3 people so far." "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Lena exclaimed, her face lighting up with genuine joy. Dean observed the interaction with interest. Owen Parker was indeed a remarkable child, bright-eyed, articulate, with an enthusiasm that hadn't been dampened by his circumstances. "You must be the artist," Dean said, extending his hand to Owen. "I was just telling your mother how impressed I was with your space painting." Owen's eyes widened as he shook the offered hand with endearing seriousness. "Thank you, sir. I used special techniques for the nebula part. Ms. Thompson showed me how to blend the colors." "It was very effective," Dean assured him. "I particularly liked how you captured the feeling of vastness. That's not easy to convey." Owen beamed at the specific praise. "Are you an artist too?" "No, just an admirer of art, though I do serve on the board of the Metropolitan Art Museum." Lena's eyebrows rose slightly at this casual revelation. The Metropolitan was the city's most prestigious art institution. Whoever Dean Marshall was, he moved in very different circles than she did. "Owen, why don't you go check on your painting again?" Lena suggested. "I'll be right here at the bake sale." After Owen darted off, Lena turned to Dean with renewed curiosity. "The Metropolitan Board? That's impressive." Dean shrugged modestly. "It's a way to support the arts in our community." "Actually, I've been discussing a potential partnership between the museum and Westbrook, an enrichment program for students who show artistic promise." "That would be amazing," Lena said sincerely. "Owen loves art, but private lessons are." She trailed off, not wanting to emphasize her financial limitations. "Expensive," Dean finished for her. "Yes, that's precisely why we're developing this program. Talent shouldn't be limited by financial considerations." "Mr. Marshall, I hope this doesn't sound strange, but have you been watching me and Owen? At school drop-offs, perhaps?" Dean's expression remained neutral, but his eyes showed a flicker of respect for her directness. "I've observed the Westbrook community on several occasions while considering this partnership. You and your son have stood out. His enthusiasm, your dedication. It wasn't quite an admission, but it wasn't a denial either." Lena decided to take a risk. "And would you happen to know anything about an umbrella, a grocery card, or an asthma monitor?" A small smile touched Dean's lips. "Those sound like useful items for a busy parent, especially during this rainy season." Lena's heart raced. This circumspect conversation couldn't be coincidence. "Why?" she asked simply. Why would you help strangers? Dean considered her question thoughtfully. Perhaps because not all acts of kindness need explanation or repayment. Perhaps because I believe in recognizing quiet dignity when I see it. Before Lena could respond, a commotion across the schoolyard caught their attention. Sabrina Hayes had arrived, surrounded by a small entourage of admiring mothers. She was dressed impeccably in what fashion magazines would call elevated casual, designer jeans, a silk blouse, and jewelry that probably cost more than Lena's annual salary. Lena tensed visibly, her hand tightening on the edge of the table. Dean noticed her reaction immediately. An acquaintance of yours? He asked quietly. My ex-husband's fiancée, Lena replied, her voice carefully neutral. Ah, Dean said, understanding dawning in his eyes. The one from the puddle incident. Lena's head snapped toward him. You were there, you saw. It wasn't a question, and Dean didn't treat it as one. Yes, I did. Before they could continue this revelatory conversation, Sabrina's voice carried across the schoolyard. Absolutely. We'd be happy to sponsor the new science lab. The Whitaker family has always prioritized education. In fact, Jordan's son is thriving here. Aren't you, Owen? Lena went very still. Sabrina had spotted Owen near the art auction and called him over, placing a proprietary hand on his shoulder as she spoke to the school principal and several board members. The message was clear. She was positioning herself as Owen's stepmother, as part of his family unit. Excuse me, Lena said tightly to Dean. I need to. Of course, he replied, stepping aside as Lena moved quickly toward her son. Dean watched as she approached the group, noting how several of the mothers subtly shifted away from her, creating a physical manifestation of the social barrier between them. Sabrina's smile became brittle as Lena reached for Owen's hand. Owen, it's time to check on our bake sale contributions, Lena said, her voice steady despite the tension evident in her posture. But Miss Hayes was just telling me about the trip to the observatory they're planning, Owen said, his innocent excitement a stark contrast to the adult undercurrents. We'll talk about it later, sweetheart, Lena replied, gently but firmly guiding him away from Sabrina's side. Sabrina's voice followed them, pitched to Carrie. We'll email you the details, Owen. Jordan's so excited to share his love of astronomy with you. The interaction lasted less than a minute, but Dean observed every nuance. When Lena returned to the bake sale table, her cheeks were flushed, but her expression was composed. I apologize for the interruption, Mr. Marshall. No apology necessary, he assured her. Family dynamics can be complicated. Lena gave a short, humorless laugh. That's one way to put it. Dean studied her for a moment, making a decision. Ms. Parker, I wonder if you and Owen might be interested in attending a community center dinner next Saturday. The Metropolitan is sponsoring a family art night, dinner, followed by guided art activities for children and parents. Nothing fancy, but often enjoyable. Lena looked surprised by the invitation. That's very kind, but I wouldn't want to impose on your evening. It's not an imposition at all. In fact, I'm hosting the event and could use some friendly faces in the crowd. Owen's enthusiasm for art would be most welcome. Lena hesitated, clearly weighing the propriety of accepting such an invitation from a man she had just formally met, regardless of their unusual prior connection. As colleagues in the Westbrook community, Dean added, sensing her uncertainty. No pressure, of course. We'd be happy to attend, she said finally. Owen would love it, and truthfully, so would I. Art was my first love, before life took different turns. As Dean prepared to take his leave, he handed Lena a business card. The community center address and time are noted on the back. I look forward to seeing you both there. Watching him walk away, Lena slipped the card into her pocket, a strange mixture of emotions swirling within her. Gratitude for the mysterious gifts that had made her life easier. Curiosity about this man who seemed to know so much about her. Wariness born from years of disappointment and betrayal. The community center was not what Lena had expected. From Dean Marshall's position and apparent wealth, she had imagined something sleek and modern, perhaps in a trendy downtown location. Instead, the Riverside Community Center was a lovingly restored older building in a working-class neighborhood, with colorful murals decorating its exterior walls. Mom, look at the space mural, Owen exclaimed as they approached the entrance, pointing to a vibrant depiction of the solar system that wrapped around the building's corner. It's beautiful, Lena agreed, smoothing Owen's hair and checking that his shirt was still tucked in. She had dressed them both carefully for the evening. Owen wore his special occasions button-down shirt and navy pants. Lena had chosen a simple blue dress that she hadn't worn since before the divorce, relieved to find it still fit. Inside, the center was warm and welcoming, with the sounds of conversation and children's laughter filling the main hall. Tables had been arranged in a horseshoe pattern, covered with white cloths and set with simple ceramic plates. At one end of the room was a long buffet table, and at the other, art supplies were organized for the activities to follow dinner. "Miss Parker, Owen, welcome." Dean approached them immediately, as if he'd been watching for their arrival. He wore casual slacks and a light sweater, dressed to match the relaxed atmosphere of the event. "I'm glad you could make it." "Thank you for inviting us," Lena replied, noticing how his eyes crinkled warmly when he smiled. "This is a lovely space. The center does remarkable work in this community," Dean explained, guiding them toward the buffet. "Art programs, after-school tutoring, job training. The Metropolitan partners with them for several outreach initiatives." Owen tugged at Lena's hand, his eyes fixed on the art supplies. "Mom, they have real artist pastels and easels." Dean chuckled at his enthusiasm. "We've set up different stations for tonight's activities: pastels, watercolors, clay sculpting, and collage. You can try them all if you like." "Really? All of them?" Owen's eyes were wide with excitement. "Absolutely," Dean confirmed. "But first, dinner." The center's culinary program prepared everything. They train young people for careers in the food industry. As they filled their plates from the buffet, a simple but delicious selection of roasted chicken, fresh vegetables, and homemade bread, Lena observed Dean's interactions with the center's staff and other attendees. He knew everyone by name, asking specific questions about their families or projects. There was no hint of condescension in his manner, only genuine interest and respect. They sat at a table with several other families, including a single father with twin daughters around Owen's age. Dean made introductions, putting everyone at ease with his relaxed demeanor. "Michael teaches science at Riverside Elementary," Dean explained as the man shook Lena's hand. "And his daughters, Lily and Rose, are budding scientists themselves. We're doing an experiment with growing plants in different types of light." Lily, or perhaps Rose, Lena couldn't tell them apart yet, announced proudly. Owen immediately engaged with the twins, explaining his own experiment with growing crystals. Within minutes, the three children were deep in conversation, leaving the adults to talk. "So, Ms. Parker, Dean tells me you work at the Grand Regency," Michael said conversationally. "My sister was a concierge there for years. Tough job, but she loved the people." Lena tensed slightly, waiting for the familiar look of dismissal when she clarified her position. "I'm actually in housekeeping, but yes, the staff community is wonderful." To her surprise, Michael nodded without any change in his friendly expression. "Backbone of the hotel industry, housekeeping. My first job was cleaning rooms at a motel during college. Hardest work I've ever done." As the conversation flowed naturally from work to children to community events, Lena realized something significant. Here, in this setting, no one cared about her job title or her connection to the Whitaker family. No one was measuring her worth by her income or social status. She was simply Owen's mother, a community member, a participant in the evening's activities. Throughout dinner, she caught Dean watching her with thoughtful eyes, not in a way that made her uncomfortable, but as if he was genuinely pleased to see her relaxing, engaging with others. After the meal, the art activities began. Owen immediately headed for the pastel station, dragging Lena along. Dean followed at a respectful distance, observing as Owen excitedly explained the techniques he wanted to try. "He's quite knowledgeable," Dean commented, as Owen began selecting colors with careful deliberation. "The art teacher at Westbrook has been wonderful with him," Lena explained. "She gives him extra materials and books when she can." "And you?" Dean asked. "You mentioned art was your first love." Lena looked down at the pastels, running her fingers lightly over their vibrant surfaces. "I always loved drawing and painting. It led me to study design, which is how I met Jordan. I was interning at an architectural firm that worked with Whitaker Development." "Did you continue your design work after marriage?" "For a while. I contributed to several Whitaker projects, actually. But after Owen was born, Jordan preferred that I focus on being a mother and managing our social obligations. By the time Owen started preschool and I wanted to return to work, my skills were considered outdated." Dean frowned slightly. "Design talent doesn't become outdated. Only specific software or trends change. Try explaining that to potential employers after a 5-year gap in your resume," Lena replied without bitterness. "Besides, after the divorce, I needed immediate income, not another degree or retraining program." "You never considered asking the Whitakers for more substantial support, given your contributions to their company?" Lena shook her head firmly. "I wanted a clean break. The emotional cost of fighting them wasn't worth it, especially with Owen caught in the middle. And Jordan made it clear that if I pushed for more, he would make the custody arrangement difficult. That's," Dean seemed to search for the right word, "unfortunate," he finally said, though his expression suggested stronger sentiments. "It was what it was," Lena said simply. "We've managed." Owen looked up from his artwork, his face smudged with pastel dust. "Mom, you should draw too. Remember how you used to make those amazing pictures of animals for my bedroom?" Lena smiled at the memory. "Those were just simple sketches, sweetie. They were great. Mr. Marshall, my mom can draw anything." She made a lion that looked super real. Dean raised an eyebrow at Lena. "Hidden talents, Miss Parker? Perhaps you should join in." "Oh, I don't know. It's been years since I—" "Please, Mom?" Owen's pleading expression was impossible to resist. "All right," Lena agreed, selecting a sheet of paper and seating herself beside her son. "But don't expect anything spectacular." As she began to sketch, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence, Lena felt something unlock within her. She chose to draw the space mural from outside the center, focusing on the section that had captured Owen's attention. As she worked, she became absorbed in the process, barely aware of Dean moving among the other tables, checking on participants, occasionally stopping to observe her progress. When she finally looked up, nearly an hour had passed. Owen had completed 2 drawings and was now at the clay station with his new friends. Dean was standing a few feet away, watching her with undisguised admiration. "That's extraordinary," he said, nodding toward her completed drawing. "You have genuine talent, Miss Parker." Lena felt herself blush slightly at the praise. "Thank you. I've always found art therapeutic, a way to process emotions, to find beauty even in difficult circumstances. A valuable skill," Dean observed, "creating beauty rather than bitterness from life's challenges." Their eyes met, and Lena felt a moment of connection that went beyond casual conversation. This man seemed to understand something fundamental about her approach to life, her determination to maintain dignity and find joy despite hardships. The moment was interrupted by Owen rushing over, proudly displaying a clay sculpture that vaguely resembled a rocket ship. "Mom, Mr. Marshall, look what I made." "It's wonderful, sweetheart," Lena exclaimed. "So detailed." "Indeed," Dean agreed seriously. "The proportions are quite accurate for a spacecraft." Owen beamed at the specific praise. "Can I try the watercolors now? Lily and Rose are over there." "Of course," Lena nodded. "I'll come watch in a minute." As Owen dashed off, Lena became aware of the comfortable atmosphere that had developed between her and Dean. "He's flourishing tonight," Dean commented, watching Owen join the twins at the watercolor station. "He seems so uninhibited here, so enthusiastic. He doesn't always get opportunities like this. Art supplies are expensive, and while Westbrook has a good program, he's usually conscious of using more than his share of materials." Dean nodded thoughtfully. "Children shouldn't have to worry about such things. Art, music, sports, these should be accessible to all young minds, regardless of financial circumstances." "In an ideal world, perhaps," Lena said, "but we live in this one, with its inequalities and limitations." "Some limitations can be overcome," Dean replied, his tone suggesting deeper meaning, "with the right resources and determination." Before Lena could respond to this loaded statement, a center staff member approached Dean with a concerned expression. After a brief, whispered conversation, Dean turned back to Lena with an apologetic smile. "I'm sorry, but there's a small issue with the catering payment I need to address. Would you excuse me for a few minutes?" "Of course," Lena assured him. "Take your time. We're having a wonderful evening." As Dean stepped away, Lena moved to the watercolor station to watch Owen. The evening had been unexpectedly delightful. For a few hours, she had forgotten about their financial struggles, the social isolation at Westbrook, the constant effort to maintain stability with limited resources. When Dean returned, he brought cups of hot chocolate for both Lena and Owen. The perfect accompaniment to creative work, Owen accepted his with a polite, "Thank you," that made Lena proud. Her son's good manners, his consideration for others despite their limited means, was one of her greatest accomplishments as a parent. "Mr. Marshall," Owen said after taking a careful sip, "do you have kids too?" The direct question seemed to surprise Dean slightly. "No, Owen, I don't have children of my own. My sister's son is my only close family." "Oh," Owen considered this. "That's why you do nice things for other kids, like this art night?" Dean smiled. "Perhaps. Or perhaps I simply believe that every child deserves opportunities to explore their talents and interests." As the evening drew to a close, Dean helped Owen carefully package his artwork for the journey home. "You should be very proud of what you created tonight," he told the boy, "especially the clay sculpture that showed real spatial understanding." Owen fairly glowed with the praise. "Thanks for inviting us, Mr. Marshall. This was the best night ever. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Perhaps we can do it again sometime." As they prepared to leave, Dean accompanied them to the door. "May I call you a car?" he offered. "It's gotten quite late." Lena hesitated. The bus would take nearly an hour at this time of night, but a taxi was an expense she hadn't budgeted for. Reading her hesitation accurately, Dean continued smoothly. The center has an arrangement with a local car service for participants. It's already covered in the event budget. Whether this was true or a kind fiction, Lena was too practical to refuse. Thank you. That would be helpful. As they waited for the car, Owen yawned widely, the excitement of the evening catching up with him. Tonight was awesome, he murmured, leaning against Lena's side. Yes, it was, she agreed, brushing his hair back from his forehead. We'll have to write Mr. Marshall a thank you note tomorrow. Or perhaps you could thank me in person, Dean suggested. There's a small gallery opening next Friday evening at the Metropolitan. Nothing formal, just a reception from 6 to 8. You might find it interesting, given your artistic background. Lena was surprised by the invitation. That's very kind, but I wouldn't want to impose again so soon. It's not an imposition, Dean assured her. In fact, I could use your design perspective. In that case, I'd be happy to attend, she said finally, though I'll need to arrange childcare for Owen. Actually, Dean said carefully, the opening includes a children's art workshop in the museum's education center. Owen would be welcome to participate while we view the exhibition. The car arrived before Lena could respond, bringing a natural conclusion to the evening. As Dean helped them into the vehicle, he handed Lena a small envelope. Information about the gallery opening, he explained. My contact details are there as well, should you have any questions. Thank you, Lena said, suddenly feeling shy. For everything tonight. It meant a lot to both of us. Dean's expression was warm but respectful. The pleasure was mine, Miss Parker. Truly. As the car pulled away, Owen already half asleep against her shoulder, Lena reflected on the evening. It should have felt strange, even concerning. But instead, Lena found herself looking forward to seeing him again, to understanding more about this unusual man who had entered their lives so unexpectedly. What she didn't know was that across town, Sabrina Hayes was scrolling through her social media feed when she came across something that made her pause. A post from the Riverside Community Center showed photos from that evening's art event. In one image, clearly visible in the background, were Lena and Owen Parker, seated at a table with Dean Marshall. Sabrina zoomed in on the photo, her eyes narrowing. She recognized Marshall immediately, the investor, the Whitaker Development Board member, the man who had made her feel so uncomfortable at the museum brunch. And now he was spending his Saturday night with Jordan's ex-wife and son. This was interesting, and potentially useful. With a calculating smile, Sabrina took a screenshot and sent it to Jordan with a simple message. Looks like your ex has found herself a wealthy new friend. Isn't that your board member, Dean Marshall? Then she began to dig deeper, searching for more information about the connection between Lena Parker and Dean Marshall. Monday morning brought Lena back to her usual routine, waking early, preparing Owen for school, walking through light drizzle to Westbrook Academy. But something had shifted inside her since the community center evening. A dormant part of herself, the creative, confident woman she had been before the divorce, had begun to stir. As they approached the school gates, Owen chatted excitedly about the upcoming week. And Friday is the science fair, Mom. Mr. Patterson says my crystal project might win a ribbon. That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'll be there to see your presentation. Promise? Owen asked, his expression suddenly serious. School events had been difficult for Lena too. She knew he noticed her absences. I promise, she assured him, squeezing his hand. Nothing could make me miss it. As Owen ran off to join his classmates, Lena turned to leave and nearly collided with Victoria Whitaker, Jordan's mother. Mrs. Whitaker, Lena said politely, stepping aside. Good morning. Victoria's gaze was assessing, moving from Lena's modest raincoat to her practical shoes with barely concealed disdain. Lena, I see you're still managing to keep Owen at Westbrook. Admirable persistence. The backhanded compliment was typical of Victoria's approach. Owen thrives here, Lena replied simply. He's been invited to join the advanced learning program next year. Something flashed in Victoria's eyes. Has he? How nice. Though I understand the advanced program involves additional fees. The implication was clear. Victoria doubted Lena's ability to meet these financial obligations. We'll manage, Lena said, keeping her tone neutral despite the familiar sting of these interactions. Victoria adjusted her designer handbag, a casual movement that nonetheless drew attention to its obvious expense. I understand you've made a new acquaintance recently. Dean Marshall, is it? A colleague of Jordan's. So that was the reason for this unusual direct engagement. Somehow, Victoria had learned about Lena's connection to Dean. The speed of the information flow was impressive, if unsurprising. Mr. Marshall hosted a community art event that Owen and I attended, Lena confirmed, deliberately keeping her explanation simple. It was a lovely evening. Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. Dean is an important business associate of the Whitaker family. I would hate to see any confusion about the nature of his interest in you and Owen. I'm not sure what you mean, Lena said, though she understood perfectly the warning being delivered. Simply that Dean sits on our company board. His involvement with you could be misconstrued as some sort of corporate guilt, a misguided attempt to compensate for what he might perceive as unfair treatment by our family. Victoria's tone was pleasant, her words anything but. It would be unfortunate if Jordan felt his professional relationship with Dean was being complicated by personal entanglements. Lena took a deep breath, maintaining her composure despite the clear threat. Mrs. Whitaker, who I spend time with, is no longer your family's concern. It hasn't been for 3 years. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to get to work. She moved to step around Victoria, but the older woman placed a manicured hand on her arm, stopping her. One more thing, Lena. I understand Owen has been invited to spend the weekend at our home for Jordan's birthday celebration. Sabrina has planned quite an elaborate party. It would be a shame if Owen missed it due to scheduling difficulties. Owen's relationship with his father is important to me, Lena said carefully. I would never interfere with that. I'm so glad we understand each other, Victoria replied with a cold smile. Have a nice day, Lena. As Jordan's mother walked away, Lena remained rooted to the spot, a familiar mixture of anger and helplessness washing over her. For 3 years, Lena had carefully avoided conflict, prioritizing Owen's stability and access to his father over her own pride. She had accepted their social exclusion, their condescension, their minimal financial support, all to maintain peace for Owen's sake. But perhaps there was a middle ground, one where she could maintain that peace while also beginning to reclaim her independence, her right to form new connections, her identity beyond Jordan's ex-wife. As Lena walked to the bus stop, her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Dean, just confirming your interest in Friday's gallery opening. Transportation can be arranged if helpful. No pressure either way. DM. The timing of the message, so soon after Victoria's warning, felt almost like a test of Lena's resolve. After a moment's consideration, Lena typed her reply. Looking forward to it. Transportation would be appreciated. Thank you, Lena. As she pressed send, Lena felt a small but significant shift in her relationship with her past. For the first time since the divorce, she was making a choice that prioritized her own interest, her own potential for growth and connection, over the path of least resistance with the Whitaker family. The Metropolitan Art Museum's modern wing was elegantly lit for the evening reception. Lena felt a flutter of nervousness as she and Owen entered the imposing space. Dean had arranged for a car to collect them, as promised, and was waiting for them in the museum's grand foyer. He greeted them warmly, kneeling briefly to Owen's level to compliment the boy on his neat appearance before offering Lena a respectful smile. This is a beautiful space. One of my favorite places in the city. Dean agreed, guiding them toward the reception area. The modern wing was designed to create a dialogue between architecture and art, structure and creativity. It's super tall, Owen contributed, gazing up at the soaring ceiling with its geometric skylights. Like being inside a spaceship. An apt comparison, Dean chuckled. Now, Owen, would you like to see the children's workshop? They're creating installations inspired by the exhibition themes. Owen's enthusiasm was immediate, but he glanced at his mother for permission. Can I, Mom? Of course, Lena assured him. I'll come check on you in a little while. A museum educator was waiting to escort Owen to the workshop. Lena watched her son depart with a mixture of pride and that ever-present maternal concern, noting how confidently he engaged with the new adult. He'll be fine, Dean said, accurately reading her expression. The museum's education team is excellent. Now, shall we see the exhibition? The next hour passed in a comfortable rhythm as they moved through the galleries, examining the works of 5 emerging artists. Dean was knowledgeable but never condescending, offering context about each artist's background and techniques, while genuinely soliciting Lena's impressions. To her surprise, Lena found herself speaking with increasing confidence about the architectural elements in several pieces. It had been years since she had engaged in this kind of aesthetic analysis, but the knowledge and sensitivity were still there, merely dormant rather than lost. You have a remarkable eye. You notice elements most viewers miss entirely. My design training. You develop a habit of seeing the underlying structures, the intentional choices. It's more than training, Dean disagreed gently. It's a natural sensitivity, a way of processing visual information that can be enhanced by education but must be innately present. As they continued through the exhibition, Lena became aware of curious glances from other attendees. Several people nodded respectfully to Dean, clearly recognizing him as a museum board member and significant patron. A few approached to exchange brief pleasantries, and Dean unfailingly introduced Lena with simple courtesy. This is Lena Parker, a talented designer with particularly insightful perspectives on spatial dynamics. No explanation of their connection, No qualifying remarks about her current occupation. As they approached the final gallery, a server offered them champagne from a passing tray. Dean selected 2 glasses, handing one to Lena. "To new perspectives," he proposed as a toast. "New perspectives," she agreed, taking a small sip of the crisp, effervescent wine. They had just entered the last exhibition room when Lena froze, her champagne glass nearly slipping from her fingers. Across the gallery, engaged in animated conversation with the museum director, stood Jordan and Sabrina. "Ah," Dean said quietly, following her gaze. "I wasn't aware they would be attending tonight. The Whitakers are regular donors, but Jordan rarely comes to these smaller openings." Lena felt a surge of anxiety. "We can leave if you'd prefer," Dean offered, his tone making it clear this would not be a retreat but simply a choice for her comfort. "No," she decided firmly. "I'm enjoying the exhibition, and Owen is having fun at the workshop. We'll stay." Dean nodded, respect evident in his expression. "As you wish. Shall we continue?" They moved to the next installation, a large-scale architectural abstraction that played with light and shadow. Lena deliberately positioned herself with her back to Jordan and Sabrina, focusing intently on the artwork as Dean provided background on the artist's techniques. It was a temporary reprieve at best. The gallery was arranged in a circular flow, meaning Jordan and Sabrina would eventually make their way to where Lena and Dean stood. And indeed, within minutes, Lena heard Sabrina's distinctive laugh drawing closer. "Dean, what a surprise." Jordan's voice was artificially warm as he approached, Sabrina on his arm. "I didn't realize you would be here tonight." "Jordan, Sabrina." Dean's greeting was polite but measured. "Yes, I try to support these emerging artist showcases. The talent is remarkable." There was a moment of awkward silence as Jordan registered Lena's presence. His expression shifted from surprise to wariness. "Lena, this is unexpected." "Hello, Jordan," Lena replied evenly. "Sabrina." Sabrina's smile was sharp, her eyes calculating as they moved between Dean and Lena. "What an interesting development. I had no idea you were interested in modern art, Lena. Or is it the company that interests you?" The insinuation was clear, and Lena felt heat rise in her cheeks. Before she could respond, Dean spoke, his tone casual but with an underlying firmness. "Miss Parker has been providing invaluable insights on the architectural elements of the exhibition. Her design background offers a perspective most of us lack." Jordan frowned slightly. "Design background?" "Lena took some courses years ago, but hardly. A degree in spatial design with a focus on urban integration," Dean corrected smoothly. Her analysis of Chen's use of transitional spaces was particularly astute. Jordan looked taken aback. "I see. Well, that's nice." An uncomfortable silence fell over the group. Sabrina broke it with a deliberately bright tone. "We just saw Owen in the children's workshop. He's growing so tall." Jordan barely recognized him. It's been so long since their last visit. The barb was subtle but effective, highlighting Jordan's limited involvement in his son's life while implying this was somehow Lena's fault. "Owen is looking forward to this weekend," Lena replied, refusing to take the bait. "He's excited about Jordan's birthday celebration." "Yes, well, we've planned quite an extravaganza," Sabrina said. "Helicopter tour of the city, lunch at Cipriani, the works. I do hope his clothes are appropriate for the venues." Dean's expression remained pleasant, but Lena noticed a hardening around his eyes. "Owen is a remarkably well-presented young man," he commented. "A reflection of his mother's excellent guidance, I'm sure." Before Sabrina could respond, a museum staff member approached the group. "Mr. Marshall, the director was hoping you might say a few words about the Grace Fund initiative when he makes his announcement. Would that be possible?" "Of course," Dean agreed. "In about 10 minutes? Perfect, thank you." As the staff member departed, Sabrina's eyes narrowed with interest. "The Grace Fund? I don't believe I'm familiar with that particular initiative," Dean explained briefly. "A program to support working single parents in accessing cultural and educational opportunities for their children." Jordan shifted uncomfortably, clearly registering the potential connection to Lena's situation. "Sounds commendable, though rather specific in focus." "I believe in targeted philanthropy," Dean replied. "Addressing specific needs rather than general causes often yields more meaningful results." Sabrina's smile had taken on a brittle quality. "How interesting that you've developed this particular interest, Dean. One might almost think it was personally motivated." The insinuation hung in the air, neither Dean nor Lena responding to it directly. Instead, Dean glanced at his watch. "If you'll excuse us, I should check on Owen before the director's remarks. Lena, shall we?" "Grateful for the graceful exit," Lena nodded. "It was nice seeing you both," she said to Jordan and Sabrina, a polite formality that acknowledged nothing of the underlying tension. As they walked away, Lena could feel Sabrina's eyes boring into her back. The encounter had been brief but revealing, The Whitakers were clearly disturbed by her connection to Dean. "I apologize for that awkwardness," Dean said quietly as they headed toward the education center. "Had I known they would be here, I would have mentioned it in advance. It's not your fault." And honestly, it was satisfying in a way, to be recognized for my mind rather than defined by my circumstances. Dean's smile was warm. "You are far more than your circumstances, Lena. I suspect that's what troubles them most." In the children's workshop, they found Owen happily engaged in creating a three-dimensional sculpture with recycled materials. "Mom! Mr. Marshall! Look what I'm making! It's a city of the future where all the buildings use solar power." "That's incredible, Owen," Lena exclaimed, genuinely impressed by her son's creativity. "So detailed." "Indeed," Dean agreed, examining the structure with serious attention. Owen glowed under the praise. Dad and Sabrina saw it too. Dad said it was nice, but he had to go look at boring paintings instead of staying to help. The simple observation revealed much about Jordan's priorities, but Lena kept her expression neutral. "Well, different people enjoy different things. Are you having fun here?" "So much fun," Owen assured her. "Can I stay until I finish my city, please?" "Of course," Lena agreed. "But Mr. Marshall needs to go speak to the museum director soon, so we'll need to be quiet and listen." "I'll be super quiet," Owen promised. "Like a space ninja." Dean chuckled at the description. "A space ninja sounds exactly right. I won't be long, and then perhaps we can all get ice cream at the museum cafe afterward?" Owen's eyes widened with delight. "Really? Awesome." As they made their way back to the main gallery for the director's remarks, Lena found herself reflecting on the contrast between Dean's and Jordan's interactions with Owen. Where Jordan had offered a perfunctory compliment before returning to his social obligations, Dean had engaged with genuine interest, validating Owen's creativity and thought process. It wasn't about the promised ice cream or even the special attention. It was about seeing Owen, really seeing him, as a person with ideas and feelings worthy of respect. The museum director was already at the podium when they returned to the main gallery, welcoming guests and thanking sponsors. Jordan and Sabrina stood near the front of the gathering, positioned for maximum visibility. Lena and Dean remained toward the back, with a clear view but less prominent placement. "Before we conclude this wonderful evening," the director was saying, "I'd like to highlight a new initiative that exemplifies the Metropolitan's commitment to accessibility and inclusion. The Grace Fund, generously established by board member Dean Marshall, will provide opportunities for children of single working parents to engage with the arts through scholarships, transportation assistance, and specialized programming." There was polite applause as Dean was invited to speak. He moved forward with easy confidence, his presence commanding without being intimidating. "Thank you, Director Chen. The Grace Fund represents a belief that artistic expression and appreciation should be accessible to all children, regardless of their family's financial circumstances. Too often, cultural experiences become luxury items, available only to those with disposable income and flexible schedules. The reality is that many hardworking parents, particularly those raising children alone, face barriers that have nothing to do with their interest in the arts and everything to do with practical logistics." Lena watched as several audience members nodded in agreement, while others, including Victoria Whitaker, who had apparently arrived during their earlier encounter with Jordan, maintained neutral expressions. "This initiative will address those barriers directly," Dean continued, "providing transportation, scheduling activities to accommodate working parents' availability, covering associated costs that might otherwise make participation impossible, because talent and appreciation for beauty are not determined by income or family structure." His gaze swept the room, pausing briefly on Jordan and Sabrina before continuing. "Some women suffer silently, but those who walk through mud still shine. The Grace Fund is named for that quality of dignity, the ability to maintain integrity and purpose despite obstacles, to create beauty from difficult circumstances." Lena felt a rush of emotion at his words, recognizing the unmistakable reference to her experience, the puddle incident, the mud. "We invite you all to support this initiative," Dean concluded, "not out of pity or condescension, but out of recognition that our cultural landscape is enriched when diverse perspectives and talents are included. Thank you." The applause was genuine as Dean stepped away from the podium. Several people approached him immediately with questions or expressions of support. Lena remained where she was, processing the implications of what she had just heard. When Dean finally made his way back to her side, Lena found it difficult to articulate her feelings. "That was, I don't know what to say," she admitted quietly. "You don't need to say anything," Dean assured her. "The initiative stands on its own merits, regardless of its inspiration." "But it was inspired by what happened at Westbrook, the puddle?" Dean's expression grew serious. "By your response to it, by your dignity in the face of deliberate cruelty, by your commitment to providing Owen with opportunities despite the obstacles placed in your path. You were the catalyst, Lena, but the need exists for thousands of parents in similar circumstances. Before Lena could respond, Owen came running up, his sculpture carefully held in both hands. I finished it. Look, the moment for deeper conversation passed as they both admired Owen's creation, but Lena felt a shift in her understanding of Dean Marshall. As promised, they visited the museum cafe for ice cream afterward. Owen chattered happily about the workshop and his sculpture. Dean listened with genuine interest, asking questions that revealed his respect for Owen's ideas and creativity. It was during this relaxed conversation that Lena noticed Jordan approaching their table, his expression tense. Sabrina and Victoria were noticeably absent, suggesting this was not a social call but something more deliberate. Dean, Jordan said without preamble, could I speak with you privately for a moment? Dean glanced at Lena, a silent question in his eyes. She nodded slightly, indicating she was comfortable with his temporary absence. Of course, Dean replied, standing. Owen, please save some of that chocolate sauce for me. I'll be right back. As the two men moved to a quiet corner of the cafe, Lena tried not to stare, but she couldn't help noticing the increasing tension in Jordan's posture, the controlled calm in Dean's responses. Mom, Owen said, reclaiming her attention. Is Mr. Marshall your boyfriend? The question caught Lena off guard. No, sweetheart. He's a new friend. Someone who shares some of our interests. Owen considered this. He's nice. Not fake. Nice like some of Dad's friends who talk to me like I'm a baby. Real nice. Yes, he is, Lena agreed, glancing again toward the corner where Dean and Jordan were now engaged in what appeared to be an increasingly heated discussion. I wish Dad was more like him, Owen continued, scraping the last of his ice cream from the bowl. Before she could respond, Dean was returning to their table, his expression composed despite whatever confrontation had just occurred. Everything all right? Lena asked quietly as he retook his seat. A difference of perspective, nothing for you to worry about. But later, as they were leaving the museum, Dean provided a bit more context once Owen was slightly ahead of them, examining a dinosaur skeleton in the main hall. Jordan expressed concern about my intentions regarding you and Owen, he explained, his tone careful. He seemed to believe I was interfering in family matters that don't concern me. Lena felt a flash of indignation. That's rich, coming from a man who sees his son once a month at most. I pointed out something similar, Dean admitted, along with the observation that his current fiancée seems more interested in using Owen as a prop for their perfect family image than in genuinely supporting his development. What did he say to that? Lena asked, both apprehensive and curious. Dean's expression was grim. He suggested I had developed an inappropriate interest in his leftover, to use his exact term. Lena flinched at the crude description. I see. I informed him, Dean continued, his voice low but intense, that you are not his leftover. You are the woman he never deserved. The words hung between them, loaded with meaning beyond their immediate context. Thank you, she said simply, for seeing me as I am, not as Jordan's narrative painted me. Dean's eyes met hers, warm with an emotion she wasn't quite ready to name. The narrative was always false, Lena. Anyone paying attention could see that. The next morning, Lena awoke to a flurry of notifications on her phone. Friends from the hotel, former acquaintances, even Mrs. Wilson were all sending links to the same news story. Whitaker Development investor cuts ties over ethical concerns. The article detailed how Dean Marshall, significant investor and board member, had announced his withdrawal from all Whitaker projects, citing unspecified ethical disagreements with the company's leadership. Financial analysts were quoted expressing concerns about the impact on pending developments, particularly given Marshall's reputation for integrity and business acumen. More surprising was a related story about Sabrina Hayes. Two fashion brands that had featured her as an influencer had quietly dropped her from their campaigns after the resurfaced video of the mud puddle incident was connected to her name by social media sleuths. The video, which Lena had never seen, showed the entire interaction from the perspective of a parent who had been recording their child outside Westbrook when the incident occurred. It clearly captured Sabrina's deliberate swerve toward the puddle, her mocking comment afterward, and Lena's dignified response as she focused on comforting Owen rather than reacting to the humiliation. Paired with Dean's very public establishment of the Grace Fund, the timing created a narrative that the public had eagerly embraced. Wealthy socialite deliberately humiliates working mother. Respected businessman responds by creating program to support those in similar circumstances. Sabrina was being eviscerated in the comment sections of fashion websites and social media platforms. The hashtags Mud to Motherhood and Cruelty in Kashmir were trending as people shared their own stories of encounters with entitled behavior. Lena sat on the edge of her bed, overwhelmed by the unexpected public dimension of what had been a private humiliation. She had never sought revenge or public vindication, yet here it was, a form of justice she hadn't requested but that addressed the power imbalance in a way her individual actions never could have. Her phone buzzed with a text from Dean. "I hope the media attention isn't causing you distress. None of this was orchestrated, though I can't say I'm sorry to see some accountability. You and Owen deserve peace, not interference. Call if you need anything, DM." Lena believed him. Dean Marshall didn't strike her as someone who would manipulate public opinion or seek revenge through social media. His public establishment of the Grace Fund, his withdrawal from Whitaker Development, the rest had unfolded organically as people connected the dots. Owen appeared in her doorway, rubbing sleepy eyes. "Mom, can we have pancakes since it's Saturday?" The normalcy of the request grounded Lena, reminding her of what truly mattered amid the swirl of public drama. "Absolutely, sweetheart. With blueberries?" "Yes, please. And can I take my city sculpture to Dad's today? I want to show him how it works with the solar panels." Lena hesitated. Jordan was due to pick up Owen at noon for the birthday weekend, but given the morning's news developments, she wondered if those plans might change. "Let's have breakfast first," she suggested. "Then we'll make sure it's packed safely for your visit with Dad." As they ate pancakes, Lena's phone rang. Jordan's name appeared on the screen, and she excused herself to take the call in the kitchen. "Hello, Jordan. Have you seen the news?" he demanded without preamble, his voice tight with anger. "I've seen some headlines," Lena acknowledged calmly. "This is your doing, isn't it? You and Marshall, plotting this public relations disaster." Lena took a deep breath, refusing to be drawn into his anger. "I had nothing to do with any media coverage, Jordan. I didn't even know about Dean's decision to withdraw from Whitaker Development until this morning." "But you've been seeing him," Jordan accused, "getting close to him, telling him God knows what about our marriage, our divorce." "Dean and I have attended exactly 2 events together," Lena corrected him. "And contrary to what you might believe, our conversations have not centered around you." There was a moment of tense silence before Jordan spoke again. "I'm canceling this weekend with Owen. The timing is inappropriate with all this media attention." Lena felt a surge of protective anger. "That's not fair to Owen. He's been looking forward to seeing you, to attending your birthday celebration. He has nothing to do with any of this." "Sabrina's upset," Jordan replied, as if that explained everything. "The brand's dropping her campaigns represents significant income loss. She's in no state to host a family weekend." "Then just take Owen yourself," Lena suggested, trying to find a solution that wouldn't disappoint her son. "You don't need Sabrina's involvement to spend time with your child." Jordan's laugh was short and dismissive. "Don't be naive, Lena. The party involves dozens of guests, complex arrangements. It can't proceed with Sabrina in her current state. So you're canceling your time with your son because your fiancée is upset about facing consequences for her own actions," Lena clarified, unable to keep the edge from her voice. "I'm rescheduling," Jordan corrected stiffly. "When things have settled down, tell Owen I'll make it up to him." "You tell him," Lena insisted. "He deserves to hear it from you, not have me clean up the emotional mess." Again, there was another pause before Jordan sighed. "Fine, put him on." Lena called Owen to the phone, her heart aching as she watched his expression shift from excitement to confusion to disappointment as his father explained the change of plans. To his credit, Jordan did try to sound regretful, promising a rescheduled visit very soon and a special gift to make up for the disappointment. When the call ended, Owen handed the phone back to Lena, his eyes downcast. "Dad says maybe next weekend instead," he reported with forced brightness. "It's okay. We can make our own fun today, right, Mom?" Lena pulled him into a hug, her throat tight with emotion. "Absolutely. Whatever you want to do, it's your choice. Could we go back to the community center? The one with all the art stuff? I bet they have Saturday activities too." The request surprised Lena. "We can certainly check. Let me make a call." To her delight, the Riverside Community Center did indeed have Saturday programming. When she told him, his disappointment over the canceled visit with Jordan seemed to evaporate, replaced by excitement about the new plan. As they prepared to leave for the center, Lena sent a quick text to Dean. "Owen's weekend with Jordan was canceled due to the timing being inappropriate. We're heading to Riverside Community Center for their science workshop instead. Thank you for the recommendation of this wonderful resource, Lena." Dean's response came quickly. "Their science program is excellent. If you're comfortable with the suggestion, I was planning to attend a Symphony in the Park event this evening. Very casual, family-friendly. You and Owen would be welcome to join. No pressure either way. DM." Lena smiled at the now familiar phrase. No pressure either way. Dean was consistently careful to offer opportunities without expectation, to make suggestions without demand. "What do you think, Owen?" she asked, showing him the text. Symphony in the park after the science workshop? With Mr. Marshall? Owen clarified, his expression brightening. And so their day of disappointment transformed into something unexpected and joyful. The science workshop at the community center was engaging and educational. Dinner was simple sandwiches in the park, with Dean joining them on a colorful blanket spread on the grass. As the symphony played Dvorak's New World Symphony under the early evening sky, Lena found herself experiencing a moment of perfect contentment. Owen was leaning against her side, his face upturned to the stars beginning to appear above. Dean sat nearby, respectful of their space while clearly enjoying their company. This was not the life Lena had imagined for herself when she married Jordan Whitaker. But there was an authenticity to this moment, a genuine connection between the three of them as they listened to the music that felt more valuable than all the trappings of her former life. "Mom," Owen whispered as the final movement began, "I'm glad Dad canceled. This is better." Lena hugged him close, pressing a kiss to the top of his head. "I'm glad you're happy, sweetheart." Dean caught her eye over Owen's head, his expression warm with understanding. In that moment, something shifted between them, an acknowledgement that whatever was developing here, in this unexpected connection, had the potential to be significant. The symphony reached its triumphant conclusion, the final notes soaring into the darkening sky. As the audience applauded, Lena felt as if those notes carried with them the remnants of her past disappointments, lifting them away and leaving space for new possibilities. 1 year later, the grand ballroom of the Grand Regency Hotel was transformed for the first annual Grace Fund Gala. The event had sold out weeks in advance, attracting the city's philanthropic community, eager to support the initiative that had already provided arts and educational access to over 500 children of single working parents. Lena stood before the mirror in a small preparation room. Around her neck hung a delicate silver necklace, a gift from Dean to mark her recent promotion to design consultant for the hotel's renovation project. The past year had brought changes neither dramatic nor instantaneous, but steady and meaningful. With Dean's encouragement and the hotel owner's recognition of her talents, Lena had transitioned from housekeeping to the design team, her architectural training and aesthetic sensitivity finally finding professional expression again. Owen had flourished in the advanced learning program at Westbrook, his natural intelligence nurtured by teachers who recognized his potential. His relationship with Jordan had stabilized into a more consistent, if still limited, visitation schedule. After the public relations disaster and subsequent cancellation of their wedding, Jordan and Sabrina had eventually separated, with Jordan showing hints of greater maturity in the aftermath. The Grace Fund had expanded beyond its initial focus. Lena served on its advisory board, her lived experience informing policies and priorities that ensured the programs truly addressed the needs of working parents. And Dean. Dean had become central to their lives in ways that had developed naturally over time. A friend first, then something more, his respect for her independence as fundamental to their relationship as his admiration for her strength. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Mom, are you ready? Mr. Marshall says people are starting to arrive." Owen entered, handsome in his first suit, his growth over the past year evident in his height and increasing self-confidence. "Almost ready, sweetheart," Lena assured him, giving her reflection one final assessment. "How do I look?" "Beautiful," Owen declared with absolute certainty. "Like a queen." Lena laughed, touched by his unwavering support. "Hardly that, but thank you for the vote of confidence." "Dean thinks so too," Owen informed her with the directness of childhood. "He told me you're the most beautiful woman he's ever known, inside and out." "Did he now?" Lena smiled, warmed by the sentiment even as relayed through her son's candid reporting. "Yep, and he's right. You're amazing, Mom. Everyone's going to see that tonight." Lena knelt to his level, straightening his tie with gentle hands. "You, Owen Parker, are the most wonderful son a mother could ask for. Do you know that?" He grinned, revealing a new gap where he'd recently lost a tooth. "I know. Now come on." Dean said I can help welcome the important people. Taking her son's offered hand, Lena left the preparation room and made her way toward the ballroom entrance. Dean stood waiting for them, distinguished in his tuxedo but with the same warm eyes that had first caught her attention across a rainy street. "There you are," he said, his gaze appreciative as it took in her appearance. "Ready for your moment?" "Our moment," Lena corrected gently. "This fund exists because of your vision, inspired by your dignity," Dean reminded her. "This has always been a collaboration." As they entered the ballroom together, Lena was struck by the familiar yet transformed space. She had cleaned this room countless times during her years in housekeeping. Now she moved through it as an honored participant, greeted with respect by the same social circles that had once dismissed her. The symbolism wasn't lost on her. This hotel, which had witnessed both her desperate struggle and her professional rebirth, now hosted a celebration of the very qualities that had sustained her through the hardest times. Throughout the evening, as donors and supporters approached to express their admiration for the Grace Fund's work, Lena found herself increasingly comfortable in this role. When it came time for the formal presentation, Dean took the podium first, outlining the fund's accomplishments over its inaugural year. Then, to Lena's surprise, he called her forward. The Grace Fund would not exist without the inspiration of one woman whose dignity in the face of adversity revealed what true strength looks like. Lena Parker, who now serves as our advisory board chair, demonstrated that it is possible to walk through mud and still shine. Please join me in welcoming her to share more about our vision for the coming year. As Lena approached the podium, the applause was genuine and sustained. Looking out over the crowd, she saw faces that had once ignored her now focused intently on her words. She saw Owen, sitting proudly in the front row, and she saw Dean, whose belief in her had never wavered, even when she struggled to believe in herself. "Thank you," she began, her voice steady and clear. The Grace Fund was born from a recognition that dignity should not be a luxury afforded only to those with financial means. That single parents working multiple jobs to provide for their children deserve support rather than judgment. That talent and potential exist in all communities, needing only opportunity to flourish. After the gala, as guests departed with promises of continued support, Dean suggested a walk. The spring night was mild, the streets quiet as they strolled along the same route Lena had once hurried along to catch the bus after her housekeeping shifts. Owen had gone home with Mrs. Wilson, who now served as his occasional caregiver rather than his daily necessity. This rare moment alone with Dean felt precious, a chance to reflect on the journey that had brought them here. "You were magnificent tonight," Dean told her, his hand warm around hers. The donors were impressed, but more importantly, the parents who spoke about the program's impact were genuinely moved by your understanding of their challenges. "It's easy to understand what you've lived," Lena replied simply. They walked in comfortable silence for a few moments, their footsteps synchronized on the quiet sidewalk. When they reached a particular corner, Lena paused, a smile touching her lips. "This is where it happened," she said, gesturing to the street where the puddle had once been, "where Sabrina splashed us, where everything changed." Dean nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I remember. You didn't cry or shout or make a scene. You simply focused on Owen, on making sure he was okay. I had never seen such quiet strength." "I was humiliated," Lena admitted, "but making it about my feelings would only have embarrassed Owen more. Children take their cues from their parents about how to respond to difficult situations. And you taught him dignity," Dean said softly, "just as you've demonstrated it every day since." They stood there for a moment, on the spot where mud had once splashed across Lena's work uniform, where Dean had first noticed the woman who would change his understanding of true grace. "It's gone now," Dean observed, looking down at the dry pavement. "The puddle." "Yes," Lena agreed, squeezing his hand gently. "But it's where everything changed, too." Dean took her other hand, turning her to face him fully. "Lena Parker, when I witnessed that moment a year ago, I saw someone exceptional. Every day since has only confirmed that initial impression. Your strength, your intelligence, your unwavering commitment to Owen, your ability to forgive without becoming a doormat. These qualities are rare and precious." Lena felt herself blush slightly at the earnest praise. "I was just trying to survive, Dean, to keep my dignity in circumstances designed to strip it away." "That's exactly it," he insisted. "Most people in your situation would have become bitter, would have fought dirty, would have used Owen as a weapon in the ongoing conflict with Jordan. But you chose a harder, more honorable path." He paused, his expression suddenly vulnerable in a way she rarely saw. "I didn't plan to fall in love with you, Lena. I only wanted to help right a wrong I had witnessed. But how could I not love a woman of such extraordinary character? And I didn't plan to trust again," she said softly. "After Jordan, after the divorce, after the years of struggle, I thought that part of me was closed forever. But you never asked me to be less than I am. You never treated my circumstances as a deficiency. You saw me, really saw me, when I had become accustomed to being invisible." Dean's eyes were warm with emotion as he drew her closer. "You could never be invisible, Lena. You shine too brightly for that." As their lips met in a kiss that felt like both a culmination and a beginning, Lena understood that the puddle incident had not defined her. Her response to it had. The mud had dried and washed away, but the dignity that had carried her through that moment and countless others had remained, becoming the foundation for this new chapter of her life. When they finally broke apart, Dean's smile held a promise of shared tomorrows. "Shall we keep walking?" he asked, offering his arm. Lena linked her arm through his, feeling the rightness of their connection. Not a rescue or a fairy tale, but a partnership between equals who recognized each other's true worth. "Yes," she said simply, Let's keep walking." And together they moved forward, leaving behind the sight of past humiliation, stepping toward a future built not on erasing difficult memories, but on transforming them into something meaningful and beautiful.